All right, hello and welcome to another Expert Inside interview. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP, online sales magazine, and Pipeliner CRM, joining you as usual from a sunny San Diego. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Gino Barbero, who is in probably an equally sunny Florida. How you doing, Gino?
John, I'm doing good, brother. How you doing?
Great. And Gino is a certified money coach, entrepreneur, and podcast host. As an entrepreneur, he has grown his real estate portfolio to over 1,800 multifamily units and 450 million in assets under management. But your mission is through Barbero 360 is to
Yes.
empower families to build lasting legacies by focusing on restoring traditional family values and life finance and helping families create healthier relationships with money. And you're the best-selling author of Happy Money, Happy Family, Happy Legacy. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Just tell me a little bit about the background of, like, I mean, it's such an impressive portfolio that you have. Just briefly kind of sketch out how you got from zero to where you are today with that level of portfolio.
John, it started out as really unimpressive, just like most other entrepreneurs. I started out with a fourplex over 20 years ago, and
Mhm.
I was in the restaurant business. My father was in the restaurant business. I followed his footsteps. Didn't know why. I realized now why. I loved what he did. He was an immigrant. I saw
Mhm.
my path as an entrepreneur. But what I did is I bought myself a job owning a restaurant. That was the reality. Working
Right.
1 week, getting paid. I was on the hamster wheel. So I saw real estate as an avenue to possibly exit the restaurant business. Now, it took a long time, a few bad deals, the '08 recession. And what ended up ultimately happening was I ended up reading books. I ended up reading books from Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn, T. Harv Eker
Mm.
is one of my favorite, The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, when T. Harv says your fruits are in your roots. And I really wanted to, for lack of a better word, I wanted to knock him out because I thought, this guy doesn't know me. How does he know me? And then at
Mhm.
the same instance, I'm like, holy crap, he is 100% right. My roots suck. Like, I have no value. Like, I am not providing anything to anybody. And I'm out here blaming and I'm criticizing and I have no responsibility. And after I read the book in '08, I said to myself, well, I want to get into real estate. I want to build a business. How do I do that? And as any entrepreneur knows, they need to learn how to provide value. I
Mhm.
went out, I sought mentorship. I learned how to build a business in real estate. It took a few years. And then obviously, God was part of it. God opened the door. My business partner, Jake Stenziano, showed up at the right time. I knew what I was doing in real estate. I mean, I'm a lot more than he did.
Mhm.
He went down into Knoxville, Tennessee in a great market. I was up in New York. We started buying deals together. It took us 18 months to find that first deal, but slowly and surely we bought one deal and then another deal. We learned the business. Then we created a framework: buy right, manage right, and finance right. And, John, I can honestly say that I have met very few people in the real estate business that have not lost money.
Yeah.
And my partner was very fortunate because I lost all the money before he met me. I mean, that's the truth. I lost a ton of money. But what was really interesting, when we met, he actually said, "Hey, Gino, I don't really know that much. Let's put something together. Let's really learn together." We created a framework: buy right, manage right, and finance right. And I think for anybody out there, if you're a salesperson, if you're in marketing, there's certain principles that you need to
Yeah.
understand. And going through those principles and following those principles when the times are good and when the times are bad, they really help you out. And they truly helped me out in real estate as I got together with Jake. And since buying our first deal in 2013, we've been able to scale to over 2,000 units.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I just want to come back on there, Gino, because I think they're
Sure.
really important for people to hear. The first thing is, you didn't sit around and say, and this is kind of happens to a lot of people, where they sit around waiting for somebody to teach them something, or to your company to invest in you or whatever. You decided, you started reading books, and you did something for yourself. You went to, I mean, and today there's so much information available, right? You went out
Mhm.
and educated yourself first. And then the second thing you mentioned there, which I think is even better, is you to that you added mentorship, right? So you went out and you found people to help you and to give you advice. Those two things alone, I think, are massive takeaways to people, because I often hear people like are waiting for somebody to reach out and say, I will teach you, or I'll show you the shortcut to this. You said, no, there's no shortcut. I need to educate myself and I need to invest in myself.
John, it's important. one thing that happened to me back in '08, I was moving away from desperation. Tony
Mhm.
Robbins says you're either moving away from desperation or towards inspiration. I
Mhm.
am moving towards inspiration now, but I can tell you back in '08, I was moving away from desperation. I had 4 kids at the time. I think unconsciously, once again, I'll use God. He gave me a great life. I had great parents. I had a
Mhm.
great situation. And when I look at where I was at the age of 38, I was very unhappy for more, just not only the money reasons, but the fact that when I came home, I didn't want my kids to see me
Right.
mad. I didn't want them to see dad grumpy all the time. I didn't want to hide in the kitchen. I knew that I had more gifts than that. And I felt as if I was letting myself down and I was letting my family down. And that really inspired me, motivated me, pissed me off. And then when I read T. Harv's book, I'm like, holy crap. I've gotten to this point in my life because of all of the actions that I took up until
Yep.
that point. And if you can come to that realization and realize, hey, I'm not a victim here. I can be a victim, but if I'm a victim, I won't have any kind of solutions. Every problem is a problem. There's no opportunities in problems. There's nowhere to solve anything. Once I realized that, it was like a cloud lifted above me. And it didn't happen overnight. But then I started taking the right actions. I started following the right people. I started having those important conversations. I'll give you a quick example of that.
Yeah.
In 2013, as I'm closing that very first deal, I met my current business partner, Mike. Mike at the time was a hedge fund trader. He was trading gold, he was trading commodities, and I was the pizza guy. I'm sitting in the front with my stain on my pizza jacket, and Mike walks in and he sits down and he starts talking to me about real estate and gold and oil, and I just have the conversation with him. And I think he was a little taken back by this pizza guy talking about real
Mhm.
estate. And I
Yep.
said, Mike, simply, I said, we're buying this deal at $700,000. The gross rents are about $150,000 a year. You're buying an asset for $2 million, and the gross rents are about the same as what we're grossing.
Right.
Which deal makes more sense? Well, obviously, I won him over, and he has been partners with us ever since. Now, if I had not educated myself, and if I had not taken the time to be able to have that conversation with Mike and the confidence to sit down and to prepare myself, Mike is not going to fall in my lap.
Yeah.
I need to do work. Once again, God opened that door for me, but I had to be prepared to step through that door.
Yeah. And again, I mean, you added, okay, so you educated yourself, you got mentors. And then the other part that you added in there, which I think, again, is incredibly important, is that personal accountability, right?
Mhm.
I'm responsible for where I am today. The decisions I've made, I'm responsible. And I think that's such a hard thing to do, especially we live in a culture today, obviously, of where nobody takes responsibility for anything, it seems, and it's always projected externally, like it's somehow it's somebody else's, it's the economy, it's whatever, it's all external things. Taking that first step and just saying it's on me, how liberating was that?
Well, for me, I sort of, I don't want to say tricked my mind, but I did this unconsciously again. I partnered up with Jake. And
Mhm.
for some reason, we are more likely to let ourselves down, to let somebody else down. I wasn't doing all of this for myself. I didn't
Right.
want to let my family down.
Yeah.
That's pretty weird if you think about it. Why are we letting ourselves down? And the same thing with my business partner. I did not want to let Jake down. So as I was working 50 plus hours at the restaurant, I was putting another 15 or 20 hours a week with Jake, and he was doing the same thing. We had values-based decision making. We were working in alignment. I don't think we've ever let each of ourselves down. He works his ass off. I work my ass off. I found accountability in that. And then once again, I found accountability through my family. I didn't want to let them down. And
Mm.
that's, I think, what drove me. So if you're out there and you're struggling, go find the person, give them $20,000, learn how to get mentored, learn the business itself, and I guarantee you, you're going to show up to those coaching calls prepared because you have some skin in the game. That's another way to hold yourself accountable.
Yeah.
AI, great. But you know what? AI costs you nothing. You have nothing to lose. You're not going to take AI's advice as seriously as if you went out and you paid somebody and you spent time and treasure on somebody's advice. That's how you hold yourself accountable.
Yeah, no, no, 100%. I mean, I've done it myself. I had coaches in the past. My first time I ever got onto an executive team, I hired a coach immediately because I wanted to be the best vice president on the team. And the first thing my coach said to me is, so she said, "But what do you want to be?" And I said, "The best VP on the team." She goes, "Well, why don't you want to be the CEO?" And I was like, well, yeah, I could do that job. And anyway, eventually, long story short, I would head up a couple of companies later. So just shows you a coach, not just to help you where you are today or where you think you can go, and they can actually help you stretch yourself too, and
Mhm.
look at and look beyond that. But I think the other thing is what you just said there again is, so you have you have a purpose and a motivation. It's your family. You don't want to let your family down. You want to, build this for your family. And I think that's the other thing too, is like most people are in jobs or doing things today where you're probably doing it for the paycheck, keep a roof over their head, whatever, but not really understanding why the purpose, not having a purpose, or identifying a purpose. And I think that often holds people back.
I interviewed a gentleman named Ken Honda. He's one of the original gurus in Japan who wrote the book Happy Money back in 2001. He
Mhm.
sold 8 million copies. I love the interview. At the end of the interview, Ken says to me, Gino, in his Japanese accent, you need to write happy money, happy properties, happy family. And I'm like, I love the title. I just don't want to write another real estate book. So I
Mhm.
came up with the idea, let's do happy money, happy family, happy legacy. And people need to understand when they read the topic and the book, they're going to say, well, money doesn't make you happy. And that's not what I'm saying. What
Mhm.
I'm saying is, I want everyone listening to this to start earning happy money. And what does that mean to you? Well, to me, unhappy money, I can actually talk about unhappy money a lot easier than happy money. Being
Mhm.
stuck at a job that you don't want. What you
Yeah.
just said, having a roof over your head and paying the bills, that is unhappy money. Being stuck in the kitchen, hiding in the kitchen, that to me was unhappy money. To me, happy money is jumping on a podcast with John at 5:30 at night in Florida. I love that. Coaching people, helping people, closing real estate deals. That's all happy money. That fuels me. I love that. And can you imagine if everyone in this country worked towards generating and earning happy money, the energy that we would have, it would be incredible. And then you
Mhm.
couple that happy money with starting to fuel and creating that happy family by teaching the family all about money and about the economy. And then ultimately, you have that legacy component where I always thought, hey, generational wealth,
Yeah.
where I've actually shifted to that's not only generational wealth, it's legacy wealth. It's let's teach our kids legacy skills. Let's teach our kids to actually, when we pass on to the next generation, to be financial stewards, not only of my capital, but of the values that we've created in our family, and to be able to do that all together and to share that and to perpetuate the legacy. You're a gardener, you're planting a seed. You may never see that seed grow, but
Mhm.
you know that that seed is going to be lasting for the next 3, 4, 5, 6 generations.
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. And I guess it's such a different way of looking at it. And I guess as a certified money coach, I mean, what are some of the misconceptions that people have about money? Because I mean, you just outlined one there, but what are some of the misconceptions that people have about money generally?
Well, to me, the first thing is money is such a taboo topic. It's
Mhm.
such an emotional topic. Money.
Mhm.
You could just stop and you could feel the energy, and you could I can almost sense somebody listening to this and saying, oh, money. To me, money does not corrupt a person. It reveals a person.
Right.
That is my idea of what money is. Now, maybe 10 years ago, it was a lot different. But what I love about the whole money coaching process, it's 4 or 5 sessions. It's not long, but it's so impactful because what you need to do is you need to go into your past. You need to understand as a child what kind of traumas you had with money.
Mhm.
We call them money traumas. What kind of, what kind of emotions you had around it, what you heard, what you didn't hear about money. You walk towards that. It's almost like therapy. You need to go back because what happens as a coach, I'm a life coach as well. We're so amped up, we're excited now. We want to go towards the future. But if you don't look back and assess what happened in the past, you may be going back and repeating those patterns, those limiting beliefs, those behaviors that you had, and you keep tripping yourself up. You make money, you sabotage yourself, you lose money. That's why it's important to go in the past and see what kind of patterns, behaviors you adopted from your family. And maybe what's even worse is you may have had a situation where your father or your mother were terrible with money, and you're saying to yourself, man, I am not going to be that person. I'm going to build this business and I'm going to show everybody. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when
Mhm.
you do hit the top and you've got a $50 million company and you feel empty and the money is not happy, you're saying to yourself, why did that happen? Well, you're doing something unconsciously, and you're creating something unconsciously. I just want you to understand that you're doing that, and I want you to actually go and do something, live up to what your sole purpose is, what your passions are, and then you'll start creating happy money.
Yeah, no, it is so interesting. One of the things that I've discovered over the years, obviously, I mean, this is not going to be that revealing, but self-awareness, right? So self-awareness for me is the greatest inhibitor of success, and it's the greatest liberator. Now, unfortunately, it's
Mhm.
something that a lot of us come to later than we should, or would like, and what you're talking about there again is, as you said, people are afraid to look back. They're afraid to look back. They're afraid to look at themselves and really like spend. And we live in a society now that doesn't want you to spend any time with yourself, right? You've got
Mm.
distractions. You've got your phone. You've got all this other thing. Is that you don't spend any time like looking at yourself and understanding like you said, why do you react to things in the way you do, and and when you look back, what have you inherited? Some of this, is it does it come from family, does it come from experiences back there? But that whole thing of taking time out to really like be with yourself and try and understand yourself, that's such a critical step that especially nowadays people find really difficult to take.
John, you said that most of us come to it later on in life.
Mhm.
I would disagree. Most of us don't come to it later on in life. Most of us tend to avoid it. You
Mhm.
do, I do, because we live in that space. We live in
Mhm.
that world. We're around entrepreneurs. We're
Mhm.
around people who naturally want to grow. We
Mhm.
want to contribute to the world. We want to create impact. And for you to do that, you have to do a little bit of work on yourself. When I was that 5-year-old little boy going into the store with my grandmother, and my grandmother said, "We can't afford to buy those toy soldiers," in her Italian, I was heartbroken. I
Yeah.
remember leaving the store. She said, "When mom comes back, we'll go and buy them." That 5-year little boy didn't reconcile, couldn't understand. I had so much shame around that I grew up with shame around money. I grew up with fear around money. I grew up with scarcity around money. I was taught as an immigrant to save for a rainy day,
Mhm.
never for a sunny day, always for a rainy day. And these are the things you need to be aware of, because
Yeah.
as you're growing a business and a family, you're going from that paradigm of the 5-year little boy when you're making millions of dollar decisions to close a deal and to fund the deal. And you're thinking to yourself, well, you know what? If I don't buy this deal now, I may never get a chance to buy another deal. And that's how you start making mistakes. So that's why it's so important to become self aware of what happened in your past and bring it out. And, John, one last thing I'll say about it is it's really hard to do the work. I'm
Yeah.
not going to lie to you, but it's a lot harder not to do the work.
Yeah, no, 100%. And just and tell me, I like that the way you've attached this to family, right? I mean, so talk to me a little bit about that, because sometimes people feel like I need to separate. I need to like I have my work, I have my family, and the two are very separate. So I probably keep all my work stuff a little bit like compartmentalized and all of that. So but what you're talking about is like if you're reorienting your thinking, you just say, no, the family is the basis of this. This is why I'm doing this is the focus. How different is that?
To me, I've got 6 children. Running a family is the same or very similar to running a business. You need a
Hmm.
mission statement, you need core values, you need a rhythm or a cadence of accountability in both to become successful. And I want my children to love talking about money. I want them to all become entrepreneurs. My 26-year-old just had an epiphany about 2 weeks ago. She was a missionary. She went out and she raised money to work and to do work in the church. And one day, she said to me a couple weeks ago, she goes, I'm an entrepreneur. I said, tell me more. She goes, well, I love going to these farmers markets. I'm a massage therapist. I've got my own little businesses, but I'm also producing this movie and I need to raise capital. I'm like, oh, so you're an entrepreneur. She would be afraid of money a few years ago. But the fact that we can talk openly about it, my other two kids, the 23-year-old and the 19-year-old, we've homeschooled them and now they talk about money openly. We've got monthly calls with our bookkeeper. We're creating this business, Barbaro 360, around the family to change the world one family at a time. And I think it's important as an adult, whether you talk about money or whether you don't, it's going to be part of their lives for the rest
Mm.
of their lives. So I'd rather have them learn it from me, from someone who's made millions and someone who's lost millions, for them to come and to have them share my experiences. So when they're confronted with it, all of a sudden they have the ability to make decisions and not to run away from making decisions about money.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, and I love the way you put all of that, because it's so, it just seems to, as you said, it seems we don't have those conversations. We don't want to talk about that. We don't want to talk about money. We don't want to talk about those things. But as you said, like when you kind of take the stigma, I guess, out of it, is it? You take the
Yes.
stigma out of it. You take, as you said, you know, the kind of taboo subject. It's an uncomfortable, and this is the other thing is, it's naturally uncomfortable for 99% of people to talk about money.
And 99% of the people in the country are broke.
Mhm.
Is there a correlation between that? And it's true, because when I was afraid to talk about money with my wife, we
Mhm.
always had arguments about money, but the arguments were rarely about money. And I'll let everyone, and I'll implore everyone to do this as they're listening to this. If you're married, if you have a significant other, sit down and find out their background of how they grew up with money. My wife came from a background, blue collar, Irish Catholic,
Mhm.
hardworking, but never had enough money. Her thing was, we never planned, we never had goals, we never saved, we worked week to week. Whereas my side of the family were more entrepreneurial, we were more business driven. I was more of a warrior when it came to money. You put those two together, I'm also living in a place of fear where I know I'm going to have a lot of children. I need to save for money. And by the way, we can't buy organic produce. We can't
Mhm.
spend all that money. And all of a sudden we're arguing. It's not about the money. It's about the fear. It's about something else. So once you can sit down, as Stephen Covey says, seek first to understand, then to be understood. If you can do that with your spouse around money and figure out why they're arguing about money, why they're afraid to spend, or why do they overspend, once you can start having those deep conversations and you can become a little bit more financially intimate with your partner, things start to change. The conversation starts to change. And then all of a sudden, you can start having honest conversations with your children, because ultimately, I love this. I've had so many terrible situations with my kids when it comes to money, and we're having these great conversations now because all of a sudden, hey, it's an open topic. My 19-year-old 2 weeks ago said to me, you know, Dad, when I was 7 years old, we were at Gymboree. You bought, you know, we had a bunch of clothes on the
Right.
table we are buying, and she put a pair of pajamas on the counter. I looked at her and I was like, another one. Now that 6 or 7 year old can't reconcile that look, that emotion, that memory. She actually took it as she wasn't worthy, that dad didn't want to spend money on her. Whereas just I was stressed out. I'm a dad
Yeah.
who's got $600 worth of clothes. So as she got older, she said, you know what, sometimes I go online and I want to spend some money and I have this fear. I just hold back. I don't know what it is. And all of a sudden, what a beautiful way to reconcile that emotion she has today to what I did to her years ago. And I can say, hey, listen, Sophia, I'm really sorry. That is a money trauma for you. And I'd like for you to heal with it. Sit with it. You know that's not what I meant. And you know that I love you. And you know you
Mhm.
should have no shame around money. So having these conversations with your kids can be so invigorating. And to me, it's healing to me as well, because I know that I've made a ton of mistakes and I've tried my best with my kids. But as parents, we always end up making mistakes. But if there's a way for me to help rectify, or for me to help heal her past, man, I'm all in on that.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, listen, Gino, this has been fascinating, and all of Gino's information will be below this video. But before we go, please do remind people about you and what you do.
Barbaro360.com, Barbaro 360.com. Money coaching. Our goal, honestly, is to change the world one family at a time.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because, you know, you hear all the time people making these lovely, big, bold statements about changing the world and changing this. But the reality is that people like you who go change one family at a time make more impact on society than people who talk about their big global, you know, impacts or whatever,
Yes.
because it turns out that they just talk about them anyway, and they can't really, and mostly they can't really impact them. What you're doing is really impacting people. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thanks for having me on, John, today. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Listen, thank you for watching and listening, and I will see you all again very soon. Thank you.